Welcome to Seizing Valor, where we discover God's path for manhood, one conversation at a time. I'm Zack.
And I'm Joe, Indiana Jones, and Temple of Doom, a movie that is quite often slept on for good reason. And today we're going to be talking about it.
Joe, how was your week?
My week was relaxed for the most part. I had started to work on a little bit of a tan. With me of fairer skin, I had been trying to tan probably about 10 minutes, then the next day 15, then 20, then just a little bit more because I have to lifeguard as one of a few people. So I definitely don't want to burn, so I have to just build up my tolerance before that happens, especially because it's before summertime. Spent some time with my girlfriend, and we went to quite a few places. We went to a brewery with a few of her friends. I had an awesome burger. It was great. Played some board games there. Got a flight, which was beautiful. They all tasted good. One beer tasted like coconut. Cueing the Monty Python reference. Just tying up all loose ends before work right now. It's been tough. A lot of doings and all, trying to figure out summer plans too, which I'll get more into another time. How about you?
Pretty busy, actually. I had quite the packed weekend, week and then weekend, but on Friday, I had lunch with our college swim coach, Greg.
Greg?
Yes, Greg.
Greg.
So
Hi, Greg.
Greg, last name redacted. But I had lunch with him, so that was really nice. He was in the area, and so we got to catch up, got to see how he and his family are doing, and told him about how things are going with me. I did mention the podcast, and that that we're still connected via this thing and the bonds of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really good to see him. Things are going well with him and the family. And then actually that inspired me because then I headed up to Scranton the next day because I was going to graduation for Marywood, our alma mater. But in the meantime, beforehand, I was like, you know what? I'm going to contact our good friend Chris, who's Greg's brother, and go and see him. So he was actually available as well. So I got to sit and catch up with him. So I get to find out how he's doing. And, they're both swim coaches still. So, runs in the family, and their teams have both been doing well, and their families are both doing well, so it's really exciting.
Miss those guys.
I do too, and they were both very influential in our lives. Greg was an awesome coach, Chris an awesome teammate. So shout out to you guys if you ever listen. We love you guys.
Love you guys.
And then on Saturday I proceeded to graduate. So speaking of swim coaching, I, as a former coach, went to go see my former swimmers graduate. So I had 4 of them, 2 who were graduating with master's degrees and 2 that were graduating with undergraduate degrees. Mm-hmm. So I went to good old Mohegan Sun Arena to watch them graduate. It was interesting, like watching. It's been a while since I've watched a graduation, and most of the graduations I've been at, I was either in it or I was like the staff, so I was down on the floor all the time. So to see it from the top, it's like, I'm not sure if there's less people or it just maybe seems smaller to me because I'm up top. It's like, wow, I feel like it was bigger, or it felt bigger when I was down there. But so it's interesting coming back like 8 or so years later and having that perspective. Mm-hmm. Seems like it was just yesterday, but also a really long time ago. Mm-hmm. So I was able to watch them graduate. I was very proud former coach. And luckily, through God's grace, in the crowd of people afterwards, I was able to find all 4 of them, no problem. Hundreds and hundreds of people. And yet, I stepped literally out of the building and ran into one of them immediately, which was, and then they found me literally like after that. So it's
like good. Trying to like find a haystack.
Exactly. But God, guides your hand towards that needle, or the needle towards your hand, or both. And then Sunday, I went down to Philadelphia to watch a friend of mine run in a Tough Mudder. So that was interesting watch. Exciting. I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty inspired. She's not normally like a race type of person, like, or like but she wanted to do it to like get outside her comfort zone and to do something different to challenge herself. She had a really good time. I mean, she did great, and she toughed it out, and she did it with the team, so she was a super big team player. Got through all the obstacles, no problem. I mean, those things are interesting because it's not just like physically difficult stuff, like oh, you need to be strong, and like, oh, you need to be like tough. Like there's like certain things that are like psychological, so they make you like go through like ice water, so you have to like submerge yourself. Like there's like a pool, there's like two submerged walls, and it's all filled with ice water, and you have to like go underneath like these walls, like in freezing cold water. You have to run through like a field of like electrical wires that are live, not with like a lot of electricity, but still. I think they hype it up actually more in the promotional material than it ends up being. But so yeah, you have to be like mentally and physically strong. But her and her team, they were super excited when they got done. So I was there to watch. There was a little bit of a mishap because I kind of got there late, and they give them like a window to start. So it's like, you will start between 10 and 10:45, and they're like done in 15-minute increments. So it's like you have a 10 to 10:15, a 10:30, a 10:45.
Yeah.
I got there at 10:15 because I ended up at the wrong location due to a GPS error, and then I finally got there. But I was there at 10:15. I didn't know if she had started yet, and so I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I had to kind of cut across the course to get to like the halfway mark, essentially, and just kind of wait there and hope that she hadn't passed yet. So I waited there for an hour before I'm like, oh, that's it. I missed her. She already went through here. She's probably done already. And then like right at that moment, like her team like rounds the corner and nice. They were there. Yeah. So I was able then to follow them the whole rest of the second half and watch that. So that was good. It was fun. Then I came back and just some restful times, just chilling here the rest of Sunday, including watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Okay, so now that we are on the Temple of Doom, which is my least favorite of the original three, I think it's best before we go into the Christian elements that we go into a little bit of a summary. Bear with me here because a lot of this is of the occult, so we're going to be stretching like our view of it. But at the same time, there's so much that you can get in finding faith in film. I want to make that disclaimer. So the film is a prequel. It's set in 1935, 1 year, I believe, before Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones, he's accompanied by a sidekick, Short Round, which he's probably about 10, 12 years old. And also we have a nightclub singer, Willy Scott, which is played by, infamously in many cases, Steven Spielberg's wife. They find themselves in Shanghai, and after narrowly escaping this assassination attempt at Indy, he obtains this object, this valuable artifact called the Shankara Stone from this Asian crime lord. And in their escape from Shanghai,
they escape, but then they end up randomly in India during their escape
in India
to a village that once housed one of the Shankara stones that was taken.
Gotcha. Yes. All three are missing at that point in time, or he has one in his possession?
There's supposed to be 5. One of them that was in the village, but it was taken by the Thungi cult, and they essentially stole as they're trying to collect all the stones. So they happen upon this village, which is now in hard times. All the children have been kidnapped. Essentially, everything around them is dying. And they believe it's because their Shankara stone had been taken, which it was like a sacred object to them. And so they plead with Indy to try to find it for them. Which and he does.
Believe that they believe that Shankara stone like would unleash like darkness and subjugate the world if it falls into the wrong hands.
Yes, if it falls into the wrong hands. And so Indy agrees to go find it for them, but at first not altruistically. So he does so out of desire for fortune and
fortune and glory, which is a definite change character-wise compared to his Raiders time. I thought I'd some bit of character development, but eventually they go to the Palace of Pankot, which is an ancient fortress where the Thugi cult are, and this cult practices human sacrifice. Enslaves children, like we said before, that's where the children end up. And with the help of Shore Round and Willy, Indy, they infiltrate the temple, rescue the captive children, and they engage in very goofy things like a minecart chase, escaping a temple, and then also hanging off a rope bridge in between a chasm. Yeah.
Yeah. Finally,
But they do save the day.
They do, and they at least regain one of the Shankara stones and give it back to the village, and all is well that ends well, I guess. But yeah,
Well,
so all in all,
let's go. What do we think?
All in all, out of all the Indiana Jones movies, this is by far the strangest.
Mm-hmm.
It's the darkest, more gruesome, the weirdest tonal shift compared to the other ones, I suppose. And in some ways, it's weird because it's also the goofiest. Like, it's dark and goofy at the same time, which is kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie. I think they probably put the goofiness in there to help kind of even things out.
Levity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it is definitely strange, I will say.
Well, I mean, for some strengths, nothing beats the musical score of John Williams. It's highly regarded, as it should be. Makes it more intense and emotional, that so to speak. There's some definite memorable moments with the bridge collapsing. The minecart chase, as goofy as it is. The taking the heart out, as gruesome as it is. It's been memed to death. Yeah, Steven Spielberg is always a national treasure. And of course, some awesome action adventure scenes, as it should be in an Indiana Jones film.
We're not talking about National Treasure. We're talking about Indiana Jones. Wrong adventure movie, Joe.
All comes full circle.
It all comes full. I didn't see Nicolas Cage in this movie, but he was still probably there. But
yeah, you're right. Some kind of I would say that it's a darker tone. It's a flaw for it, with all those scenes of violence and human sacrifice, disturbing imagery, what have you. It's a little bit excessive and unsettling, at least for this type of genre. But yeah, definite tonal shift. I'd say also, like, character development wise, some argue that the relationship between Indy and Willy Scott, I think it's forced. I think there's a lack of chemistry for a romantic pairing. I mean, we are comparing to Karen Allen, who is also a national treasure. And then lastly, like, cultural stereotypes too. The film definitely has this history of being criticized for its portrayal of Indian culture, and the exaggerated view of Indian society. Yeah.
And even Short Round is sort of depicted slightly stereotypically Chinese, like, not really bad, but it's definitely, in the way he talks, I would say, it is sort of like that. But yeah, this is definitely, I guess, one of the first things, as we've been noting, the very dark nature of this film. So as we kind of go into the themes and like the good you can get out of it. I know this is going to be ironic to say, but there's good in the bad that's in the movie, of this idea with the Thungi cult and just it being so incredible. It's a super occult, like super, as you said, human sacrifice. It's obviously the epitome of the whole thing, but just like super dark. They're drinking blood, like it's essentially like a voodoo. There's voodoo involved. The brainwashing that's kind of like depicted, sort of like brainwashing, sort of like possession, like whatever it is after they drink the blood or whatever.
Right.
It's there's good in the bad, and the fact that they depict the bad is bad. Like, they don't try to depict the Thungi cult as sympathetic or like, this could be the right thing. It's like, no, this is evil. Like, this is bad. This is evil. And we are trying to defeat this evil thing. And they don't pull the punches because in reality, evil is ugly. Evil is awful. Like, evil is, and sometimes you need to depict, how ugly evil really is and how messed up evil really is.
Right.
Which a lot of movies today, which sometimes, like, people who sin, it can be complicated, which is more depicted in modern movies of like, bad people are complicated. But sometimes it's good to have a cut and dry, like, movie where it's like evil is evil. And like, the purest of evils is evil. The occult is bad. The occult is evil, and that's in real life and in this movie. That there is no saving grace for like things like this.
Yeah, the film definitely portrays the Funky Cult as an embodiment of evil practices, including, like we said, enslavement and human sacrifice. We as Christians can reflect, on the importance of discerning between, encountering different cultural beliefs and practices, but recognizing that not all aspects of a culture align with biblical values.
I think it's also really good to point out the fact that it's so extreme and is really helps set it up as, if you look at it the right way, it's very much the antithesis of Christianity. So when you look at like stuff like the Fungi cult and like what the occult they do there, it's very much Jesus. When Jesus came, like he like undid all of that, because he like presented the exact opposite. Like, so he broke through all of that evil. So like they practice human sacrifice. So this idea is that people are sacrificing other people in order to get more power, to get on top, or whatever. So it's always going to be a constant climbing over each other, trying to get the best of one another, trying to be the one who's the sacrificer rather than the sacrificed. Scapegoating, essentially. I mean, that's what human sacrifice was, scapegoating. You sacrifice one person, literally, in the whole, like, you essentially put all the bad stuff on one person, and then you sacrifice them to make things better. Or you think.
Very cutthroat.
Exactly. But Jesus undid all that because he was the willing sacrifice. He willingly became the scapegoat. Like he sacrificed himself. So all these other people are trying to sacrifice each other to get to the top. Jesus put himself at the bottom. And he was God, and he sacrificed himself. These people are trying to sacrifice other humans to God in order to get power. But Jesus is literally God, and he showed us that the way is to sacrifice oneself. Not necessarily literally all the time, but like, this idea is like humility, not search for power, but humility. And that Jesus was a servant. And like, whereas Kali and all that are depicted as ruthless, dark, wanting like human blood and like not caring. Like this idea is like, if a god wants blood, like he wants human sacrifice, there's nothing ever stopping that from being you tomorrow. So like, if you think I sacrifice this one person so that my deity will protect me and care about me and give me power and stuff, it's like, there's nothing stopping that from being you tomorrow. And so a God who requires human sacrifice is not a personal God, is not a God.
It's not a relationship God.
No, it's not a God that loves you or cares about you. So therefore, that's why it's so important what Jesus did, where he came and sacrificed himself, because that's like the ultimate love.
Yeah. And isn't that like our relationship with the world too, which can also be just as cutthroat? It's not forgiving. And that's the difference between, God and the world. The only true forgiveness and only true representation of love. Now, when you mention Jesus, specifically, he taught us, or at least showed off to the world the power of redemption and breaking free from our own sludge, our own sin. And I think that's also a theme in this movie, and I think it's represented in the character of Short Round. So he forms a immediate bond with Indiana. He's a young boy who accompanies him on this adventure, and helps Indy break free of the influence of the Fungi cult that happens midway through the movie.
Absolutely, I agree. Like, a few things I want to touch on there. One is another brief kind of, I think, antithetical moment as to like how Christianity is like the perfect opposite to this like occultish behavior. Like, we notice that Indy, when he gets under this trance or brainwashing or whatever we want to call it, is he's forced to drink like the black blood of like some other person or something like that that's been done in some ritual or whatever they call it, the black blood of Kali or whatever. And he becomes enslaved. So he drinks that blood and he becomes enslaved. Whereas Christ died and gave us his body and blood, and when we drink the blood of Christ, we are set free.
Yes.
This idea is that we don't drink the blood of another person. We drink the blood of, a God who loves us so much as to die for us. And through it, we become free. We are set free. So just another way that you can see how, once again, what Jesus did was so monumental, and like,
Mm.
and not only just in terms of like complete opposite of a lot of pagan religions at the time, but also how it's the only way that a true God can show love to
Mm.
everyone, like how important it was for the love aspect. But anyway, going back to what you were talking about, I'm glad you mentioned Short Round and Indy, because I think that was the best part of this movie. I think
Oh
that
yeah.
was the biggest redeeming quality, was the relationship that Short Round and Indy have, as father, like a father son, like mentor mentee, like hero sidekick, big brother little brother, whatever you want to call it. Um, it's just beautiful, and the love of that relationship is, you're right, what redeems Indy at the end is that Short Round, and expressing his, his love for Indy, in that sense, that like son to father, brotherly love, whatever you want to say. And it didn't even have to be romantic love. That was the other thing too. I like that it wasn't like Willy didn't show up and be like, "I love you, Indy," and then that like saved
That's
the
the
day.
thing that
Yeah.
saves him. No.
Instead, it was like this kid that he actually has a good relationship with, um, almost in a Frozen-esque type way, the sisterly bond. But anyway, the that bond is what saves him. That and being burned by a torch. But I could
It also
say
kind of
that.
makes me feel like how I don't exactly take the relationship between Willy and Indy seriously. Kind of, now that I just thought of it, there's a reason that she didn't save him. I don't know, like
It
she's
just
not that much of a good influence on him, I guess.
they don't even really start liking each other until like halfway through the movie. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all based on the lust. Let's be honest here.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
anyway, going back to the whole torch thing, I feel like there's some symbolism there too. You could even see that as like the fires of the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
and it touches Indy, or the other kid, the leader, the other people that end up getting broken
The
free.
voodoo
But
kid. Yeah, the
yeah,
voodoo kid.
it's just like the fires of the Holy Spirit reawakening you, and bringing you back to yourself, freeing you from the slavery of sin. Um, yeah, bringing you back to your senses essentially, and bring you back to good. But even outside that moment, I think this relationship with Short Round is kind of what helps Indy grow throughout the movie in general, from this guy who starts as like I want honor and glory, to being like, I'm going to do the right thing. So I think that's another good thing. I think, I don't know. There's a level of, I debate back and forth whether I like the growth or accept the growth better in this movie versus Raiders. For whatever reason, it seemed more natural. I don't know. I even felt like in Raiders a little bit at the beginning. I think he was a little full of himself. Maybe not the honor and glory of the I want stuff in a museum and for the sake of knowledge, but I do felt like he still had a little bit of that cockiness and self-aggrandizement to him, which is understand. It's only a year later. We can't expect somebody to change like 180 degrees in a year, but yeah, he goes very much from the start of. I think it's important to note, like, so one of the big growth things is that he sees people with value more. Like, so at the beginning, he's when he's in Shanghai and he's trying to get the diamond from what's his face, the Chinese guy. Yeah. He threatens Willy. Like he uses Willy as expendable.
Yeah.
He like has like the meat fork or whatever, and he's like threatening her with it to like kill her or hurt her if like he doesn't get the diamond or the antidote then once he's poisoned. So he like very much does not value human life as much, or only the value of the people he knows. Like, so obviously he values Short Round's life. He values the life of that one guy, waiter that was in disguise that ended up dying. He doesn't value Willy's life. But then by the end of the film, he could save his own skin at one point. At the one point when when he's broken free from the trance, they've got the Shankara stones, they could leave and be fine. But Indy's like, nope, we're going to go back and we're going to save all those slave kids.
Right. Yeah.
So he doesn't know those kids. He doesn't know them.
He shows the importance of protecting and rescuing the vulnerable.
And did you also notice when he gets in the fight with the big guard, like the big Indian guard, and the guard gets stuck, like, and he's about to be crushed by the roller? Indy tries to save him. Like, Indy tries to stop him from dying. Yeah. So it's like this guy who was trying to kill him, he tries to stop. He's like tries to keep him from dying. Doesn't work, but he tries.
And he gets steamrolled. Yeah. this highlights like the horrible plight of these enslaved children who are forced to work in these unsafe, horrible conditions. And Indiana become and Short Round, they become their, their advocates and work through to get them to be liberated. And we as Christians, we are also called to care and are called to help out the vulnerable in society, extending grace to them.
I think it's also important to note, especially with the child slavery, is I think it's important to have that along with the Thungi cult, because it shows that you can't separate evil from like greed, or like this desire for money and wealth and all this stuff. That, not that wealth can't be useful used rightly, but this desire for excessive wealth, because they were partly using the kids to dig for the missing Shankara stones, but they were also using them to find gemstones so they could get money to like be well off and like use to like support the cult or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then up top, like in the palace, obviously we see this very lush lifestyle that this wealth, this money, this power, this in a way that is kind of depicted as stereotypically like off-putting, but this idea that you can't separate this unhealthy desire from wealth from the evil that is like the cult. So this idea is that they're parallel, that they're both like evil things, and it's not a coincidence that they're kind of linked, so to speak. I'm not here saying that everyone with wealth, like for those listening, I'm not saying everyone here with wealth is like part of a cult. It's not, no, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying is that where there is some evil, usually there's some other form of evil nearby. So this idea that, they're true, and anyway, is what I'm saying is that they're both forms of evil. So the fact that they are coexisting in the same place is not a surprise, so to speak, for the movie. And it's the same thing. They're searching for monetary power over others versus like the spiritual power over others. Which I also just want to bring up a quick note. There's a line in the movie where he says something like, "We'll get all the Shankara stones and we'll do all these sacrifices, and then we'll be so powerful that Kali will overflow the Muslims and then the Jews, and then like we'll overthrow the Jewish God, and then after that the Christian God will fall." And I mean, you're thinking like, if your deity needs these rocks and or human sacrifices in order to be omniscient or omnipowerful or whatever, then he's not God. Like if he needs you in order to be powerful, then he's not God.
Not
like,
God.
That's the thing, because he can't be dependent and be God.
Very interesting. It showed this, now that you brought that up, it kind of shows another theme of like the limits of what a human can do, the limits of human power, and the need to be something greater, to be like a force of darkness, the need for something greater to even overcome darkness too. Christians, we can find parallels in the belief in God's sovereignty, and we recognize that relying on human strength and just our abilities, it's insufficient compared to what our God's power is.
And it's good to point out too that's another reason why like this deity or whatever Kali or like, and it's not a loving, because this idea is that true love can only exist when you don't need the other person. And God does not need us. God did not need to create us. He chose to create us, and he does not need us to exist. He chooses for us to exist, and he does not need us to love him, but he does want us to love him, and he loves us. So like this idea is that God is truly the perfect God, the perfect loving God. And I think all the Indiana Jones movies have the general overarching theme of the dangers of trying to play God, or of like trying to be God, or of trying to overthrow God. Like the Nazis did it in Raiders when they tried to like control God via the Ark, and they all died. Like, this idea that the Thungi cult is trying to, overthrow the British and then all these other religions by amassing this power that they can get, and this idea, then they all die. Like, it's this idea, the dangers of trying to be God, which is really the original temptation. Like, the temptation from the garden is to make yourself God over God. So that's, and it obviously it doesn't end up good for anybody in any of these movies that tries to do it. So this idea is that we really truly need to let God be the sovereign of our lives, but that's because he loves us, not because we're weak, or not because like he enjoys controlling or manipulating us or any of that stuff. It's because he loves us and he wants what's best for us, and we need to be able to trust him in that, and let him love us. I mean, this is a little break from some of the heavy stuff, but I was already talking to you about this beforehand. But I mean, for some of the scenes from a physics perspective in this movie are a little ridiculous. Atrocious. And the one I just cannot get over is the beginning, when they jump out of the plane in the raft, and that somehow they don't even land on a slope. They land on like flat ground. Fine. They're fine. They live like soft.
Isn't it
as
like
a
snow mountain?
No, they were on dirt. Like, there was snow on the mountain, but they landed on a dirt patch and it was flat. I was thinking like, oh yeah, they're gonna land on the side of a mountain and they're just gonna like kind of ski their way down. Nope, they're like, but then they kept moving, and then they fell off like a cliff, and then somehow landed in like whitewater rapids, perfectly fine.
Perfect for what they're in currently.
And then it killed me too that we're like, where are we? We're in India. We were just in China, and now we needed some silly excuse to be in India, and that's what we got. And I know you mentioned the minecart scene then too, and all of
ridiculous.
The ridiculousness
and the flooding,
and and I just can't.
One thing that always bothered me about the ending scene, like a little nitpick, but I think they just showed like stock footage of alligators just tearing up a bunch of clothes. Obviously, you can't you can't put like actual human bodies in there because they would be mauled to death. Because there are ruthless alligators. They will, take one bite of your head and just roll you around, and that's how they just But I felt like it was just stock footage of, because they kept just showing like once somebody like was starting to fall, you cut away to somebody's face, and then they immediately go to like, oh, they're just ripping off some clothes and presumably bodies.
Speaking of the ending scene, I do have another little nitpick. So in the minecart scene, they have guns and they're trying to shoot them like continuously, like the whole time. First of all, just like in Star Wars, I don't know what it is about George Lucas. Like, he wants guns, but he doesn't want anyone to die. Because like everybody in George Lucas movies has terrible aim, even at point blank range. But that's not my nitpick. So they're trying to shoot them down. This Gungi cult people are trying to shoot them with guns. But then when they're on the ravine, they have bow and arrows now. Like, why? Like, what happened to the guns? They only had 3 or something, apparently. And now they had to shoot them with bow and arrows. And I think Indy gets hit with like 2 or 3 arrows, and he's just like, oh, what the heck? Oh, whatever. Just like stuck in my back, but it wasn't that hard. So why are they even shooting at me? They're not good at it, obviously. It's
the jacket kind of, braced it.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, he wasn't even wearing a jacket at that point in time. He was wearing like a loose-fitting shirt.
Yeah, exactly. That was like half torn apart because the guy tried to rip his heart out or whatever, and somehow it didn't work. We don't know why, but it didn't. And
it helps to look all rugged.
Yeah, something like that. But Willy, my gosh, I know we've said it again and again and again, but like, it just was not. For everyone listening, like if you're looking for a romance to emulate, this is not it.
This is not it.
This is not it.
This is not it.
Indy, I mean, they're both obviously they don't really care about each other all that much, and
in fact, they constantly berate each other. And once they notice, oh, we're young and single, let's just hook up.
They never really give any reason as to why they kind of start having a minor affection or anything towards each other, which I wouldn't even call it that. But there's not even a real important change. And I think it's probably partly also because Willy just, I mean, I feel like she had to be there just for comic relief mostly. That she had to be the comic crazy voice in all of the dark things that were happening in this movie.
When they put some character like that in there, it's supposed to be a representation for us out of the weirdness that we see, but it kind of has the opposite effect where we see her as weird and we see everything else as, the typical adventure.
I guess you could kind of see this if you really want to stretch it. I mean, first of all, I think Short Round is more like the light and the innocence in all of this, and like, but you could also, I guess, argue slightly minorly that Willy is supposed to be that too. Is that this whole, she's so naive, not naive in like the ways of the world, but in this action hero environment, that she is so naive, she's so green, like she's not used to going outside. That all this weird extreme stuff, she's just not used to all that happening, which is weird considering the fact that her boyfriend was like her former lover or whatever was like a Chinese gangster or something. But like, still, this idea is that she's supposed to represent the innocence of everything that's going on, of like how a real person would react to all the messed up stuff that's going on. But I think it falls flat because she's not really a pure individual, like, at all. She's very selfish. She's very self-centered. She's very lustful. Like yeah. So I could see maybe there's an argument that somewhere in there she's like a light, but as I said, it doesn't really work because she's not very much a good person. Not like Short Round. This is the podcast
can't sing his praises enough. Yep.
They should have called it Short Round in the Temple of Doom. I hope Short Round is in the 5th one. That would make it better. I guess if we had to sum up this whole movie and the theme of all of this is that evil truly is messed up. There is like true evil is ugly and it's terrible. Everything about like the Thungi cult is pure evil, and evil is ugly, and evil is terrible. But
there is redemption. But there is redemption in that environment that you are surrounded in.
Yes, there is. Love is the answer. Love is where hope resides. Love is the light, and it doesn't need to be romantic love, as we saw. Like the love between Short Round and Indy in that relationship.
True agape.
That's where the redemption is. So when you feel like you're surrounded by evil or darkness, and not necessarily this extreme kind, but just any evil in your life, like reach out to the two relationships that matter most, your relationship with God and your relationship with other people. And it's in that relationship and in that love and in that self-sacrifice that you will find freedom, that you will find redemption.
Thank you so much for joining us on Seizing Valor. We hope that you found our exploration of the Christian elements in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom insightful, thought-provoking, what have you. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and hit that bell icon to receive notifications for any future episodes on our Seizing Valor YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Spotify to stay updated with the latest episodes, and be sure to connect with us on Instagram for any behind-the-scenes content or just additional discussions. Your feedback or comments and engagement are so invaluable to us. And as we continue to explore the faith intersecting with pop culture too, we appreciate your support and look forward to hearing from you. Also, if you have any additional prayer requests that you want to keep private, you can email us at seizingvalor@gmail.com.
All right, let's bow our heads. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all here today, myself, Joseph, and all those who are listening to us. First and foremost, as always, please bless Josh and his family, and we look forward to having him back. But in the meantime, please provide for all of their needs, and just help them to remain close to you in the palm of your hand, and know that they are loved. So, Lord, evil is terrible. Evil is ugly. Evil is awful. And oftentimes, there's no two ways around it. That's just the way it is. That's the plain truth. And sometimes it needs to be said. And we thank you for those times that it is that obvious, because it shows us that, things aren't always gray, that they can be black and white. And sometimes we need to see evil for what it truly is so that we can reject it. And in many ways, by seeing what is evil, we can therefore find what is good. So by seeing the opposite of what you desire for us, we can more truly appreciate that which you do desire for us. So by seeing this evil, we can more appreciate the good and the love that you have for us. But please help us in moments where we feel like evil is surrounding us, like it does in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Help us to look for the light, as small as it may be, particularly in relationships, in friendships. First and foremost, our relationship with you, because for even when there is no one else around us, you are always there. A lot of times you're acting through another person, but even aside from that, you are always there. You are always there protecting us, guiding us, guarding us, loving us, seeking after us. So help us to be open to your love and to, as St. Peter did, ask for you to save us. But also help us to remember that your light also shines through other people and our relationship with them and the love that we have for them and they have for us, just as Short Round has for Indy and vice versa. So help us to be able to value and treasure and look for that light of those loves, to be able to embrace it, especially in the darkest moments. And help us to be open to that redemption. And just like Indiana Jones, as we're finding out many times, Lord, there's a lot of things about us that are not perfect. Sometimes we act selfishly. Sometimes we don't act in humility. Sometimes we don't truly appreciate those around us. But help us to remember that we are works in progress, and that we can grow and we can become better. So help us to be open and let you mold us and mold us into better people. Just as in each of these movies, Indy is slowly being molded into a better person. So just help us remember that in the end, love is the answer. We ask all this always in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Good.
Amen.
As always,
all
we
right.
are Joe and Zach.
And we'll see you next time for The Last Crusade. But it's not their last crusade, nor is it our last crusade, but it is the movie The Last Crusade.